Human trafficking in all its forms and ramifications don't seem to be abating, with all efforts being made by states and even international collaborations. The death of some girls on the overseas rather recently leaves a lot to be desired, more so with media reports alleging that their ages range from 14 to about 18 years old. The program is Frank Talk. Thank you so much for joining us. I am Alpha Jackton. My guest is Mr. Joseph Chidebere, who has vast knowledge of issues that border on human trafficking trends and is working at stopping same. Sir, I'm glad to host you this morning.
Yeah, thank you. It's a pleasure meeting you.
You know, you can see I'm even stumbling in my introduction because this is an issue that is very dear to my heart.
Exactly, yeah.
And I find this issue most worrisome. Walk us through how we got to where we are today.
Well, first and foremost, it's good to recognize that human trafficking has been thriving
in
the
Nigeria
shadow
for quite some time.
in the absence of so many. I mean, it's very close to all that we imagine. And it's something that has eaten deep into the nation. I call it a weapon against the future of young people because over 80% of victims of human trafficking are young people.
That's right.
Globally, I have about 27 million victims. And then in Nigeria has the highest rate of human trafficking in Africa. Okay. According to Global Slavery Index, about 875,500 victims we have in Nigeria. And this is so alarming that every year you see so many young Nigerians taken out of the country for exploitation.
That's right.
Yeah, and they can be in different forms. Most times, an average Nigerian would think that a human trafficking is when you take a girl from Benin to Italy.
That's right.
But they have different forms that are taken for most times for organ removal, which is trending now.
That's right.
That are taken for most times for domestic servitude. We have housemaid.
That's right.
Which is very common in Nigeria. From rural areas, children
That's
are
right.
taken with the
Yes.
promise of going to school. They end up becoming house slaves
That's right.
at home.
That's right.
Most times are taken for baby factory. You have the one that happened in Imo State and other states where young girls are taken to a secluded place where they're made to have sex with men, get pregnant, and after giving birth, the child will be taken out from them and sold to either desperate couple or sold for ritual purposes. So it has over different purposes. So, and the problem we have is that, yes, the federal government has tried to, come up with the TIP Act 2015, which also strengthened NAPTIP as well. But I don't think it's enough. This is a crime that worth over $32 billion, and we can't combat it with empty pockets.
What we are saying is that this is actually a global
It's
syndicate.
a global, yeah.
It's not something that is relegated just to Nigeria.
I'm telling you. So, for me, governments need to do more because they need to be audacious in their public statement and commitment to combating human trafficking. NAPTIP alone can't do everything. NAPTIP is not even well funded because we have so many reports coming in. But it takes resources to do that.
You know, talking about NAPTIP as a government agency, to a large extent, what do you make of NGOs and what have you that are also tilted towards combating human trafficking?
Yes, well, NAPTIP is like a body. It's just like the head. It's like a body. Everybody we have the hand, we have the others. We are like joined together to make sure we fulfill the same purpose.
That's right.
So we as NGO is also trying to complement what NAPTIP is doing. Yes, so why NAPTIP is a government agency that is empowered to enforce the law, we as an organization, what we do is advocacy. So when there are cases, we report to NAPTIP. NAPTIP has the legal power to arrest a trafficker.
All right, that's the trend.
Yeah, that's a trend.
All right.
But even at that, NAPTIP also lack resources.
To carry out some of this,
yes, they have the passion, they have the idea, but they lack the resources. There are instances where it takes them time to even intervene in cases because of lack of resources. So that's why I'm saying that government is not doing enough.
You know, government is not doing enough. Joseph, what do you make of awareness as far as parents are concerned? I will want to find out from you. You work among people that have been trafficked and what have you.
Yes.
In most instances, do you think caregivers, parents are usually aware of the fact that, listen, my child is being ferried across, or my child is even moved from the village to the urban areas for domestic servitude, as you did mention?
Yeah.
Do you think parents actually have that understanding?
Yeah, well, large number of parents, not a large number of them are not aware, because lack of awareness makes one more vulnerable to trafficking. When parents are not aware that a child, when he's taken from rural area with the promise of going to school and is taken to urban area and not going to school, is human trafficking. And most times, considering the economic situation of the nation, where we have parents that have about 10 children and thinking of a way to take care of them, so they want to move out some of them to friends or relatives. So that also contributes to that. But I think parents who are aware are also more careful in giving out their children. However, some parents are also desperate as well. Yeah, some parents are desperate. They just want their child to go out there and make it, irrespective of
How?
how.
Because it's funny, like the case in hand, where we were told that some of these girls that were raped
Yeah.
and murdered, their age ranges are between 14 to about 18.
18.
I mean, to a large extent, these are still very young people.
Yeah, that's why I was telling you that this is like a weapon against the future of young people. Reports shows that 80% of the victims of human trafficking are between the ages of 6 and 24.
What is responsible for this? Do we call it poverty?
Yeah, well, poverty is also one of them. But on a personal standpoint, I would say the first cause of human trafficking is not just the situation, it's also the trafficker. Most people put blame on the situation, I know, which is good. But on a personal standpoint, the traffickers are the causes. Because of the desperation to make money, to get cheap labor and others, put them, into a situation of trying to exploit people. And then the next is the economic situation and the porous border, where it's easy to take someone out even without immigration dictating what is happening.
But I know at our airports you can hardly do that. It's almost impossible through our airports.
Well,
maybe through our porous borders that you did mention, yes.
Well, so many people also traffic through airports if they get a visa. So like I told you, it takes many people to traffic a victim. Most times we have the document provider, we have the one that will forge the age and others.
And all those
So
things.
it's like a network. So I know that it's not very the rate is very low in terms of the airport, but we still have some that are taken through airports.
At least those who attempt to leave the country
Yes.
under legitimate terms.
Yes.
That is largely being reduced
Yeah.
because of security checks and what have you.
Yes. Yeah.
But as we talk about this, could it also be that it's just the greed of man?
Yeah. Two ways. One, the trafficker, greediness, to make money from individuals, seeing human beings as commodities, not as human beings, because they think they can generate 100 times what they invest in recruiting a child. The second one is also in terms of the parents who are not contented with what they have, who feel that Nigeria is not a platform for them to thrive or to achieve their dream. They are moved by people who come out from different countries to Nigeria, telling them this is what they have achieved, and they want to send their children out there. Is also a contributing factor. Yeah, because we have parents who are so desperate, they want their children to go out by any means.
It's funny, because whether we like it or not, even the economies in these western parts of the world now, it's not as if they are really striving the way they were striving 20
course,
years
there are
ago.
no roses. Money
This
don't go in
cheap
the
labor
trees.
we're talking about, I mean, you don't pick gold on the streets of
course,
Milan
yeah.
or on the streets of New York or one of these places.
Yeah.
So why are we still seeing young people come up with this psyche, and it appears nobody is doing anything at challenging it?
Yeah. And another thing is that the trafficker, they have a way of trying to lure the victims. They have a way of painting situations with promises. They promise them scholarship, but they don't go to school when they go there. Most of them, they promise them good jobs, but they end up doing the worst jobs.
I mean, you
So-
probably don't have a certificate to back up what
thank you very much.
So how do you intend to go and get the job there?
So they come with this psychology, psych them with promises, things that do not exist. Most times, even for football, because you will know that even trafficking in football. We have young stars
Okay.
who we have illegal and unregistered football clubs that really recruit young boys and take them to countries with the promise of putting them in a reputable football clubs.
Wonderful.
And then some of them don't come back.
Wow. That's serious.
So it's just taking different shapes.
It's multifaceted.
I'm telling you, everything.
Once upon a time, what we knew in this part of the world was, well, girls were trafficked.
For sexual exploitation.
That was what we knew. But we are now hearing that football is there.
East football is
They
there.
also take people for, harvesting essential,
Yes.
vital human organs and what have you.
Yeah, and the organ, you know that there is a high demand of organ now. We have
That's right.
thousands of people that line up for
Kidneys.
transplant.
Mm.
And these people take advantage of that because there is high demand. Then they have to make sure they use other ways, black market, to get kidney from people, liver and others, and then sell it at a high rate. Most times they deceive the victim that they are donating it to help people, and then at the end of it they sell. Most times people are trafficked and their organs are harvested and sold. Most times at the rate of 200.
I watched this little documentary where a particular village in India, it was. Literally everybody in that village has sold off one of his kidneys because they went there. In that instance, they will even pay them.
Yeah.
They pay them maybe as little as $1,000,
Yeah.
$500.
Yes, yes.
And it was a pity sight.
Yeah, I heard of it. They go to villages, convince them that, say, you are in a very desperate situation. The best way out, just one of your kidney can be sold and you survive.
Because you can live with one
you can live
kidney.
without it. And without knowing that even when your kidney survive, you still need money to maintain it.
To maintain it, that's right.
So they just sold their kidney at the rate of very cheap.
That's right.
amounts.
Because the documentary I'm sharing with you, what I really saw was a lot of these people that have done that are living with very, very bad aftermath
after
effects,
effects, yes.
swollen feet, and most of them will just end up dying. Because as you did mention,
Yeah.
there's no proper post operational
Yeah,
care.
operational care, yes. What even some doctors also do that. Even organ trafficking is not just when somebody is taken out. Even it even happened in Nigeria when a doctor treats a patient and take out an organ without the consent of the person. So it can be in different form most times. It happens, and doctors even contribute to that because for organ trafficking to take place, a surgeon must be
Involved somewhere.
Yeah.
Is the media doing enough to curb this trend?
Well,
as far as awareness is concerned, is the media doing enough?
Well,
Let's begin with the media.
first,
My
I'll begin with
constituency.
people's TV. I mean, what all that they're doing is something commendable for you to have, seen that this is an issue that needs to be addressed.
Thank you.
But I would say the level of media participation is very low, probably because of the government encouragement or whatever. Maybe government is not encouraging them enough to, take it very serious. Because one thing that when the government is very audacious about this cause, when there is a national call for action against human trafficking,
That's right.
then media will follow suit. So if media is not doing enough, it can also be reference to the way government take human trafficking.
You work with an organization that is channeled or aimed at seeing that we bring human trafficking to a naught.
Yes.
To a large extent, share with us how you go about these things. Do you visit schools? Do you have advocacy visits? Do you get to talk to little children to know that, listen, Nigeria is their country, they can grow up in a country they so dream of, instead of doing all within their power to see that they get ferried overseas and what have you? How much engagement do you have?
Yes.
How much engagement are other NGOs doing
Yes.
to see that at least the psyche of the Nigerian child is
Yeah, it's our mandate. Our mandate is to engage young people in the fight against human trafficking. For some years, we've been doing awareness and going to communities. But at the point, we realize that there is so much work to do, but few people are doing it. We now started to step up our approach by training advocates because we need more people to be at the forefront. We can't be everywhere. Nothing can be everywhere. But we need young people to become advocates. So what we do, we train young people. We select from different states, train them as anti-human trafficking advocates, empower them to be watchdogs, to be watchmen in their communities and carry out action. So most time when we train them, each person will sensitize about 100 people in their community and observe and report incidences. And we have so many reports. We've rescued so many victims. Yeah, so even recently, U.S. Embassy sent me to U.S. to study for a conference where I also presented a research paper.
Beautiful.
And part of that is also when I come back, I will train core members as advocates, which will be happening tomorrow with support from U.S. Embassy to train them. After training them, they will now go to different communities and carry out action, report to us. And that will increase the level of awareness. Not just awareness, also reportage.
That's right.
Because most people see things and they don't recognize it.
And this thing is very close to us,
It's
but
close
most
to us.
times we don't know.
And they don't report. In fact, we are planning to develop a mobile application called Tokam.
Good.
Now, because we realize that
That was
most
going to
times,
be my next
most
question.
times people see things and how to report it becomes a problem.
All right.
So for us not to have excuses, we have a
Mm.
mobile app that the young people, wherever you see things, you can use your mobile app, your phone, Android phone, and report. It will come to our central unit. We'll now connect the nearest law enforcement agent to intervene in the
Excellent.
situation.
That's a beautiful
So the
one.
token will enable people to voice out what is happening around them.
That's right.
Yeah, it's a campaign that we're starting, and though we are hoping to get sponsors and others to make sure we make it.
You keep it
because
afloat.
it will be the force of East in Nigeria.
You know, beyond what you're also thinking of doing, I think you can also have, you can use the social media
Yes.
to
yes.
also sensitize people
Yes.
on the heels of, listen, it's not what you think.
Yes.
It's, I mean, the grass is truly not greener,
You're right.
because in most instances you may not even get there.
Yes.
You know, there was also a video I saw some 2 weeks ago where people were cramped up in what
In
do
a
you call
truck.
them, in a truck.
Yes.
People were cramped up in containers, you know,
Yes.
calling, begging, please come and rescue us and what have you. And I'm sure these were people who thought, oh, everything out there is gold.
Yeah.
Everything out there is heavenly.
Yeah, thank you for that. We do. In fact, recently we had a partnership with Stop Traffic London. Yeah, for on media campaign, both the digital media and social media, and it have been trending. The statistic we have reached about 2 million people within Africa.
Wow.
So we are collaborating with them to make sure we leverage on social media to create awareness on human trafficking.
Looking at the African scene, where is trafficking most prevalent?
Nigeria, because of the population.
Because of our
and
population.
statistics. Yeah, Nigeria, according to UN, is the destination country for people trafficked. Not the destination; it's also a source.
Wow.
And transit. So people move out from Nigeria to countries, and some people are taken from other countries to
True.
Nigeria.
I know a place like yours may not have much control over the clergy, but in your instance, do you think the clergy is doing enough to curb human trafficking?
Yeah, well, religious groups have a role to play in the fight against human trafficking, because most of the victims also attend religious
organizations.
So, but I think they are yet to buy into this fight. They are yet, except few churches like Catholic, who also has an arm of anti-human trafficking.
Okay.
And
the Catholic Church has an arm like that.
Yeah, Caritas.
Oh, interesting.
Caritas, yeah.
Okay.
And then we have Salvation Army ministries also. But I think majority of the church are not even aware of this. They don't know that they have an influence on the congregation.
That's right.
Yeah. So
and if they do something about it,
yeah,
I think it's all about awareness. We
Awareness,
just
yeah.
need to talk about it every day.
every day.
Whatever space is available, let's talk about
Everyone has a role to play.
Everyone
it's
has
not,
a
and anyone
role to
can be a
play.
victim. That's what they
it. That's
don't know.
true.
Whether you are rich or poor, rich people can be kidnapped and they're gonna harvested. So nobody is exempted.
That's right.
Yeah. So it's high time people see it as not just the government responsibility, but everyone's responsibility. Even the private sector should be engaged. Unlike in US, where we have private sectors adopting anti-human trafficking as their corporate social responsibility. But Nigeria here, the whole thing lies on government and non-governmental organization. And now no funding.
But I mean, beyond putting up a bill, do you think that that sector, or those that are truly, passionate about saying that this trend is curbed, do you think they have reached out enough to make even those within governmental sectors to understand how serious this problem is?
No, they are not. Now, let me ask you, have you ever heard of any statement, maybe either national statement from the presidency or
Not at all.
Cool.
But why
See,
is that the case?
yeah.
Because whether we like it or not, this thing is on the increase.
Yeah, they need
the
to stimulate
media is
action.
daily awash
Yes,
with it.
because they need to stimulate action. Now, even how can private sector get involved if they have doubts that this is a national priority? Because private sector want to invest their money where they think government has interest.
That's right.
So if they think government doesn't have interest in combating human trafficking, is not a priority, they won't like to invest. And that's an issue. This is an issue we have. Imagine if there is a national call for action against human trafficking, and state governors are also doing something about it. Come on, we'll go a long way in combating this human trafficking. But I mean, with the level, I mean, I'm afraid.
If the economy were to improve dramatically today, do you see a slowdown in this trend?
Yeah.
Because from all indications, we tend to blame everything on the economy. We tend to blame everything on the economy. Do you expect to see any changes?
In some extent, because economic problem is one aspect
it's
the
just an
causes
aspect of it.
human tra- So
It's not really like the base.
Yes, yes. It's not really, no. It can.
Share with us, what are some of these other reasons that you think people get trafficked?
Yeah, also in terms of stigma, discrimination, gender inequalities, where women are seen as sex objects, where there is high demand for sex, the bodies of women are commoditized. So the traffickers leverage on that because it's money. When you take a girl to have sex with a man, the man pays. It's an issue. And we're in a society where women are discriminated. So that makes them more vulnerable. So policies also have to change as well. Yeah, thank God for the tip ad, but there is also should be policy for preventing human trafficking in terms of changing the way women are treated in their communities.
So
Also
what
as a-
we are talking about now is that from your work and from your reports reaching you and what have you, is human trafficking most prevalent amongst females or amongst males?
Yes, very prevalent among more than 70% of the victims are women.
Okay.
And in fact, 70% of the reason why people are trafficked is usually sex trafficking, and it's mostly women that are trafficked. Men is just very little, maybe 1% out of most times for homosexual.
Okay.
Yeah.
Or even that is,
Yeah,
is an aspect of it.
Yeah, it's an aspect of it because some boys are so trafficked, and what's happened to them is that other men have sex with them.
But I'm sure, these things we are talking about, if those of us sitting here are so surprised about it, it means there are lots of people out there who probably don't even have an inkling that these are some of the issues that
Yeah.
go with it.
Yeah.
Because normally what comes to mind is, all right, is for domestic
Yes,
uses,
yeah.
for prostitution, and what have you. I'm just hearing that from you now.
Yeah, it's happening. The thing is that these traffickers can be also creative. While we are planning how to combat human trafficking, they're also planning how to the new ways to lure victims. So on our own part, it requires consistent approach, innovation to combat human trafficking.
That's right.
I mean, we don't need to use weapon. We need to use our intellectual weapon to combat human trafficking.
That's right.
Because we're dealing with a secret network.
How much of a collaboration is your organization having with entities like Nollywood? Don't you think it's about time we start getting films in Nigeria that will, because whether we like it or not, Hollywood is one of the portals through which millions of Nigerians are reached.
Yes.
More so that group, the young people.
Yes.
Don't you think that some form of synergy by writing scripts that will depict the ills of human trafficking and will depict, what people go once they are abroad, maybe that will also help?
Yes. Nollywood has a very strong role to play. And in fact, earlier this year, we inaugurated our anti-human trafficking ambassadors, which include Nollywood actors like Kenneth Okonkwo, Rachel Beckham, and John Fashanu, and then a few others, just to make sure we bring them in the fight against human trafficking. And Rachel Beckham and Kenneth Okonkwo have been planning on coming up with a movie that will depict human trafficking. It's just funding as well.
That's right.
Because which producer will want to fund that? Do you understand what I'm saying? So they're also sourcing for fund on how to do that.
Now, I want to believe if they really reach out, they are passionate Nigerians that will fund such
there can be different
endeavors.
episodes on TV, national TVs, on human trafficking, which will go a long way to help.
I want to believe that will go a long way to help.
Yeah, it will go a long way to
It will
sensitize
sure
it.
go a long way to help. As we did mention earlier, issues that bother on education, the clergy, the media, and ultimately everybody.
Yes.
Everybody should indeed be involved, because this is an issue that concerns all of us.
All of us.
It breaks my heart to think that girls between the ages of 14 and 18 that are looking forward to a life end up this way.
30 of them, 26 died.
Yes. I mean, it's so sad.
It's so
sad.
So sad.
It's so sad. As we move on, normally I want you to share your thoughts with us. We've gotten people deported from other countries of the world back home.
Yeah.
Some of them were actually trafficked at some point.
Yes.
I've read such reports. Is there any form of rehabilitation on the part of government or on the part of non-governmental organizations for those caliber of persons?
Yes, there are. I'm aware that NATIP has a short-term shelter. I call it short-term because there is a limited time the victim can stay. It's just a temporary shelter. They have in Lagos, Abuja, and a few other places.
Okay.
And then Watcliffe also did amazing work. They also have a shelter. But the truth is that the shelters are not enough to accommodate.
I understand.
On the place, even every state should even have
A
a
shelter.
rehabilitation center.
That's right.
Yeah, where if something happens, they can. So there is also a challenge where when they come in, a challenge of rehabilitation. Where are we going to put them?
That's right. Because in
Yes.
some cases we understand that once they come in, they just get a stipend,
Yeah.
and then they ask you for your state,
And
where you
yeah.
came from,
Yes.
and then once you get there, you're lost.
And most times some are kept in police custody, not as criminal anyway, but
That's
because
right.
there is no other option in place to. Where if the shelter at Watcliffe is
Full.
fully accommodated, and the one at Naptip is so where some NGOs also have, but they're also struggling. Some of them, they can only take about 20 or 30 or 40 people, and they also need to feed them as well.
You've had the opportunity to travel to other places,
Yeah.
to share research papers, to share your thoughts. Share with us, what were other experiences that you got from other parts of the world as to how best they curbed human trafficking?
Yeah, first is the US. I mean, I must commend the US government for setting a pace in the fight against human trafficking globally. And I was so amazed when I traveled to US for a conference and interact with anti-human trafficking experts, and looking at how the government made human trafficking a national priority, stimulating action even from private sectors. Now, even in US, we even have tertiary institutions adopting human trafficking as their corporate social responsibility. They have research institutes. So it's no longer the state affair.
That's right. It's now
Institutions are
taking over.
Now, private sectors are also taking over, trying to provide support, innovation, and new technology to combat human trafficking. But first, the government stimulated the action. Not just the federal government, even the state governments. At the state level, most states have anti-human trafficking units.
Okay.
So, I mean, Nigeria has a lot to learn from US. A lot to learn
In that
from US,
regard.
yes. So they also have more policies like human trafficking prevention policies that support runaway youth, homeless people.
All right.
Not just the tip art, but for others. They also have what they call business transparency on trafficking and slavery, where every business is supposed to give a report that they are not involved or they're not patronizing goods that were produced by victims of human trafficking.
Interesting.
So that makes them to participate in the fight against human trafficking. We see businesses showing that they stand against human trafficking and also providing support.
One other aspect of human trafficking that normally we don't talk about is the one that happens locally.
Yeah.
Where kids are sourced from the villages, as you did mention earlier, to urban areas.
Yes.
And with the promise of, okay, they will go to school, or maybe they will acquire some kind of skill. And at the end of the day, nothing happens.
Nothing. Yes.
They are just used as domestic servants, and that's the end of it. No future prospects in any way.
Nothing. And freedom, they can't even talk to their parents.
That's right.
Their
And most of them even end up being abused.
Sexually abused, yes. We have a number of them. They get we rescue from
physically abused and all
they
that.
get we rescue from Lube last 4 months, sorry, was that it was her uncle that took her from her state to Abuja.
Anybody would
and she
trust
spent
an
2
uncle.
years without going to school. Keep doing domestic work. Most times they beat her. You see bruises on her body. And when our volunteer reported, we had to engage in active and we rescued her. We are planning now because no resources. We have to plan on how to send her back to her parents, to unite her with her parents, and also provide scholarship for her.
Joseph,
So, yeah.
I will continually ask this question. Is this all because of the level of poverty in our land? Or is it just the poverty of the mind? Is it just some form of deception somewhere? Is it lack of understanding?
Yeah.
Is it the lack of awareness? Because I just can't seem to get my grip on this issue.
There are more than 5 causes. Poverty is one of them. Illiteracy is one of them. Lack of awareness is one of them. And then desperation in the part of the young people who always think that unless they go to the city, they can make it. So with that in mind, it put them in a situation of vulnerability where they have anyone promising them to take them out. They won't accept.
So we're looking at issues that border on rural-urban migration. Now.
Yes.
That's also another angle to the whole thing.
Yes.
The boy out there feels, I cannot
make it, I just want to go out,
And once they get to the cities, the next thing they are thinking of is, I met someone some 3 years ago who walked up to me, and he told me that he has 150,000 naira. Can I help him get a visa? I was like, I don't know anything about stuff like that. So I had to sit this young man down, and you know when we got talking, I was like, "But what do you need a visa for?" He said he wants to go to Qatar. That was the name of the country he
Yeah.
mentioned. And the questions I was asking him is, who do you know in Qatar? Nobody.
Nobody.
What do you want to go and do in Qatar? No.
Mm.
But to be honest with you, I later discovered that the young man has traveled. Wherever he is now, I just
Nobody
hope
knows.
he's fine. But I did my bit by making him realize that with this 150 that you have, you can actually start a business in Nigeria.
Yeah.
And you can become a Dangote in another 30 years.
Yes.
But as far as he is concerned, no, he
It's
hears
only
that
to
in
travel.
Qatar, you can pick gold,
And
you can pick dollars
Yeah,
on
yeah.
the streets.
Yeah. In fact,
That is
we-
one issue I think we
Yeah.
really need to hammer on.
Yeah, that is. We're even trying to start up another project called End Illegal Migration Advocacy to, change the mindset of young people
Yes.
on traveling, illegal migration, just to let them know that it's not all roses out there. So I think that will go a long way to help, reform young people's mindset from primary, secondary, and tertiary institutions, so that they won't start thinking that once they finish school, the next
That's
thing
it.
is to leave. Then I also want to go back to the causes. In fact, there is a victim we rescued last year.
Okay.
She was trafficked from Abuja to Kano for forced marriage.
Wow.
After 9 months of the parents going through police and nothing happened, they came to us, and then we had to engage in active and rescued her. But at the point of investigating and find out why, we realized that there was a family issue because she was staying with her stepmother, and then she wasn't comfortable.
So she was
Probably
looking
she
for
was
a way
maltreated.
out.
Yeah.
All right.
Then that occurred to me that even maltreatment at home can make children vulnerable. Imagine when the parents are not in good terms.
That's right.
It affects the psychology of the child. When the child starts feeling, "Hi, God, I wish I can just leave this family. I'm so tired. My
So
father beating my
any-
mother."
Any given opportunity,
They want.
these things are truly multifaceted.
So there are underpin causes that people are not even aware.
That's right.
Yeah.
And it's only people like you who handle
Yes.
these cases that can truly
Yeah.
come and share
Yeah.
and let us know.
Yeah.
Yes, if the home is not at peace, I
It
understand.
made them
A child will look for every and any given opportunity
A
to
stranger
take
can
off.
come with a better promise.
That's right.
Paint it well, and then the child will think that is the best option for me to accept.
I think one other thing I want to get the chairperson of NAPTIP. I will want to also get her thoughts on some of these issues.
Yes, it's very important.
Because there need to be so much advocacy,
Very
because I quite don't understand why we're having these issues. Yes, the economy is not well.
Okay.
The economy has really never been well for
that's
everybody.
For everybody, yes.
There's no part of the world you go that you won't meet someone
Yes.
who comparatively is not less in terms of economic prowess than the other. And that is not the reason why we should start selling human beings. I was discussing with a few people this morning saying that, okay, do we need to start maybe eating children to say we are poor?
We are poor.
Because what you do is that when you send a child to an unknown land where he doesn't know what tomorrow
is it?
holds for him, it's as good as you're eating him up.
Yeah. The worst thing, this also affects the economy of a nation. It's a threat. These young people have vision. Some of them can contribute to economic development of the nation, and are taken out. Who knows if the child didn't traffic, wasn't trafficked, what would he or she would have contributed to Nigeria?
That's true.
So it's just something that really affects the economy.
That's another aspect.
It
to
affects the
whole thing.
economy. Some of them have so brilliant dreams, but their
Yes.
future have been frustrated.
Frustrated.
Their dreams shattered because of human trafficking. And looking at it another way, this was about 150 years ago. What we know was slavery,
Yes.
but now it's modern slavery. And now there is more number of people in modern slavery compared to 150
What
years ago.
was obtained during the days of
Yes,
slavery.
it's slavery.
And you can see, as you did mention, the American media is doing so well
Yeah,
in that regard.
yeah. This
Bringing to fore these issues.
we have CNN that has the Freedom
the
Project.
project.
Yeah. So I think if media start adopting this, special program on human trafficking, that will go a long way too.
That's right.
And that's what we're trying to do with Talkam. It's not just mobile app. We want to make sure we engage media. Maybe once in a week or once in a
The
month.
traditional media
we now
too.
have Talkam, where we have a show. We get reports, analyze reports of what is
What's
happening.
going on.
And then that will help to strengthen the policy and inform the public. This is what is happening in this state, this is what is happening in other states. that will go a long way to help.
And human trafficking, as it were, I know in Nigeria it's more prevalent in some parts of the country than other
Yeah,
parts.
it depends on the form. You know, if it's commercial sex trafficking, it's very high in Edo states.
Okay.
Not just Edo, even in some parts. But it's just that Edo has gotten a name that each time you always refer to Edo. But they are also transiting to other states. Then in terms of level of exploitation, Lagos is also has a high number and other northern states. And you know, different forms of human trafficking.
That's right.
Can be high in different states. Yeah.
Well,
but every state, I mean, it happens in every state.
Every state.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, Joseph, we have to call it a day here. This is about all we can take on Frank Talk this morning. I must commend you for what you're doing.
Thank you, it's a pleasure.
Keep at it. I think it's great service to God.
Yes.
It's also great service to humanity.
Yes.
Whatever we can do to see that this trend is curbed, possibly abolished completely, I think it will be good for humanity. There can't be anything that is more debasing to human character and the human person than the fact that a human being is merely seen as a commodity.
No.
I think whatever needs to be done to stop that should be stopped.
We won't handle it as like Ebola was handled. You know how Ebola was
addressed.
Right.
Because everybody was scared.
Everybody was scared. Because that is how we need to take human trafficking.
That's
like Ebola.
Right. I agree with you. Well, Joseph, thank you so much for your time and thank you so much for your thoughts. We hope anytime we call you to come and give us an update, you will avail yourself.
Definitely.
Thank you so much. I am Alpha Jackden. That's all we can take today. Thanks for watching.